Now, some of you might not think that a sign like this is needed, since it's pretty self-explanatory that you shouldn't be sleeping inside waste bins or even going in them for any reasons. However, there have been a few cases where some are just homeless and are trying to seek some form of shelter. Another situation might involve someone who's drunk and just so happens to unluckily end up sleeping in one of the bins. And unfortunately, in these two situations, sometimes a person's life can be taken away. While there are many examples, I want to focus on one that involves a man named Cory McGee. On the 23rd of September 2016, Cory McGee was out drinking with his friends in the Bury St Edmunds area of Suffolk, England. Knowing that he was going to spend the night drinking, he drove his car to the town and intended on leaving his car there overnight. During that night, Cory and his friends had visited various clubs such as the Beer Inn and Flex nightclub. Around the early mornings of the 24th of September, Cory had separated from his friends after leaving the Flex nightclub. It was reported by the club's bouncer that he asked if Cory could leave because he was too drunk to stay, in which he had no trouble leaving and actually even talked to the bouncer for a bit outside after. At around 1:15 a.m., McGee went to a local pizza takeaway restaurant named Mamma Mia's Takeaway. While there, he was caught talking to a group of people at the restaurant and then leaving later on. At around 3:25 a.m., McGee was found walking around the area of Brent Govel Street that's known by the locals as the Horseshoe area. It should be noted that this specific area had a ton of wheelie bins, and Cory has been known for sleeping in bins while drunk in the past. This CCTV footage is the last time Cory McGee would be seen, as he never walked back towards the camera. Between 3:30 and 6:30 a.m., Cory's phone registered that he was near Barton Mills, which was roughly 12 miles away. It was theorized that he simply just fell asleep in a doorway at the Horseshoe area first, and then he moved towards Barton Mills during that time frame. But many argue that he must have been picked up from a vehicle because covering that distance in his state was highly unlikely, as his phone indicated that it took him just only 28 minutes to get there. A few hours later, at approximately 8 a.m., his phone would then switch off. Just 2 days later, on the 26th, Cory McGee would finally be reported missing after not making it to work that day. After the report was made, the Suffolk Lowland Search and Rescue Team held a police search alongside the RAF around the areas of Bury St Edmunds and his home in Honington. As a side note, Cory had spent up to 3 years as a member of the RAF regiment, and that's why the RAF was looking out for him as well. In order to get some more information about Cory, his close friends and family members were contacted. While being interviewed, Cory's mother, Nicola, had stated that she believed that her son was picked up from someone, since she explained that he would likely accept an offer if someone asked him, as he would do the same if he saw someone else walking alone late at night. Months had gone by at this point, and unfortunately, Cory was still missing, and investigators were starting to get desperate. At this point, over 2,000 hours worth of CCTV camera footage were reviewed, and those who made contact with Cory that night were heavily looked into on the camera footage. For those last few remaining hours Cory was seen on camera, 39 people were in the same area Cory was in. But out of the 39, only 16 of them were identified and gave little information about Cory that night. It got to the point in which a pod at a Christmas fair was installed in Bury St Edmunds. Locals were encouraged to visit it so that investigators could possibly reveal the identities of the other unknown people Cory interacted with. This did actually help identify certain people, but yet again, no useful information was provided from them when questioned. In December of 2016, Nicola had become extremely unsatisfied with how poorly investigators were doing when it came to finding her son. It even got to the point that she offered a €50,000 reward for anyone who found him, and was considering hiring a private investigator. And so, with all the tension rising and little progress being made, a police search on local landfills began in February 2017. As I mentioned earlier, Cory had slept in bins before in the past while drunk, and so local landfills and bins were being searched in the Horseshoe area. By June of that year, it was reported that over 4,430 tons of waste had been searched, and just 1 month later in July, the 20-week landfill search came to an end after no inquiries. So for the time being, looking through incinerated waste would be done instead. Later that year in October, another landfill search was done at the Milton landfill site in Cambridgeshire, as it was believed that it contained waste taken to the site around Cory's disappearance. This once again stopped just shortly in December after nothing relevant was found. Just a few months later, in March 2018, Suffolk police came forward and stated that the search would be put on pause as no realistic inquiries were left. Cory's father, Martin, explained that his son was likely dead and somewhere in a waste disposal system, but that he couldn't be found due to his remains being unretrievable. However, his mother was still in disbelief and continued to look for answers on where her son was, as she believed that a third party was involved. But as time went and nothing new popped up, an inquest was conducted in November 2020 after a request was made by his family. It ended on the 22nd of March 2020, and it was concluded that Cory McGee had passed away after climbing into a commercial waste bin, which was then tipped into a bin lorry, and that he died due to compression asphyxia and multiple injuries. Also adding on that his impaired judgment due to alcohol consumption contributed to his fatal incident. Now looking back at the sign, Cory McGee's death is a prime example of why bins are always checked before emptying, because you just never know what could be hidden in that bin. The sign is one of many for an escalator that was once known as the longest single-span escalator in the southern hemisphere, as they have a length of 30 meters. Located in Melbourne, Australia, Melbourne's Parliament Railway Station had the longest escalators for nearly 40 years since it opened on the 22nd of January 1983, but as of October 2022, the title has been taken away by the Airport Central Railway Station in Perth, Australia, and was surpassed by the Central Station in Sydney just last year. The reasoning on why such long escalators were created was because the train tracks are deep below. Also, the Parliament Station is one of the 3 underground stations on Melbourne's City Loop, meaning tons of ongoers travel through this station. A yearly station report from 2023 to 2024 revealed that it carries 5.8 million passengers per year, which makes it one of the busiest stations on the metropolitan network. With that being said, it takes a total of around 1 minute and 30 seconds to get from the top to bottom. However, this can be different as during peak hours, the speed of the escalator goes much quicker than quieter times of the day. However, this later changed in October of 2019, when locals started to realize that the escalators were going much slower than usual during rush hour. This was because Metro Trains announced that they were testing new speeds to improve the overall safety and that there would be a reduction in accidents. A report by Australia's ABC News revealed that 2 to 3 serious incidents occur each week at Melbourne's busiest railway stations, and as it turned out, Parliament Station had the biggest risk. Their findings disclosed that more than 600 escalator-related incident reports in the last 9 years were studied, and it was shown that almost half of the incidents were due to people falling backwards while traveling up the escalator. Adding on, this was twice as likely as falling forwards while traveling down the escalator, and that 39% of commuters were carrying bags. To get even more information on why accidents kept occurring, Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology design experts were also asked to observe the station and provide some explanations and point out harmful design flaws. And it was explained that a lack of vertical lines in the building could be a potential reason. As more time was spent looking at other problems, another hazard was from the lights reflecting from the ceiling of the tunnel and the stainless steel panels, which may have led to spatial disorientation. Just shortly after, Metro Trains included more signs that warned commuters about the dangers of the escalators, and the lighting within the station would be refurbished to include a concealed light source to minimize reflections. Around the beginning of 2020, these mysterious posters started popping up out of nowhere in Sheffield, England. The posters asked whether or not you would know if you were dreaming at this very moment. It then gives you 3 steps to follow that includes checking your watch or clock, then to look at something else, and then to look back at your watch or clock again. It ends off by stating that if you're inside a dream, your watch or clock will display a different time when you look back at it, and that this is something you should frequently check. What made these signs confusing to those who saw them at the time was how random it was, especially since it was created by the Sheffield City Council. Due to the confusion, some local residents contacted the city council and asked what was the reasoning behind the posters. As it turned out, members from the Sheffield City Council would receive the news about the posters, and it was explained that it must have been some form of street art and that they weren't the ones responsible for it. Not surprisingly, this wouldn't be the first time someone or a group of people have made fake signs and posters and acted like it was created by an official organization. In this scenario back in February 2016, the sign of a supposed level 5 goose warning garnered the attention of those traveling through the London Underground. From what the sign states, the goose on platform 2 is violent and has claimed the platform as their own. In the bottom right corner, the official Transport for London logo can be seen, and just like the other situation I just mentioned, many were genuinely concerned and started to question if it was real or not. Once the London Underground network was contacted for confirmation, they shared that they weren't responsible as they have processes in place to ensure that only approved messages are printed and distributed. Adding on that someone may have photoshopped the text onto one of their posters, as there's some sign of alteration when you take a closer look. Now, while the original image hasn't been found, it could be assured that this was indeed photoshopped and just a fake. No official news reports revealed that there was an aggressive goose on the loose. And there was even another instance just a year later in June 2017 that deals with another fake Transport for London advertisement. The sign apparently told people to wear deodorant in an unprofessional manner and was quickly debunked as being photoshopped, with the sign being the original. So with that, it's safe to assume that the level 5 goose warning was a complete hoax. US Route 58 is an east-way highway that runs from the US Route 58 just northwest of Harrogate, Tennessee to the US Route 60 in Virginia Beach, Virginia. In particular, what made Route 58 infamous was the 22-mile 2-lane undivided stretch section from Emporia to Cortland that resulted in multiple crashes and casualties that usually consisted of head-on collisions between cars and semi-trucks due to the poor highway design. Some other dangerous features included the highway's sharp curves, narrow lines with no shoulders and steep ditches, and some even described it as being a perfect example of highway hypnosis, an altered mental state that slows down the brain of the driver and leaves them feeling less alert and reduces their reaction time while on the road. This is because the road was extremely long and there weren't too many notable landmarks or distractions on the route, which could put the driver in a trance-like state. To put things in perspective, between 1970 to 1990, there was a recorded total of 1,300 accidents and 107 deaths, which is an average of one accident occurring every 6 days. Because of this, many of the locals referred to this route as Suicide Strip, and with the local authorities being well aware of the highway's problems, eventually the sign was created for ongoers driving by, letting them know about the potential dangers up ahead. There was even another sign that congratulated the drivers, letting them know when they had successfully passed the strip. But even with the warning, local residents still weren't satisfied with how the situation was being handled. During the early 1980s, residents started to pressure the state to prioritize plans on widening US Route 58. A committee was then organized known as 58 Can't Wait, which would successfully lead the $42.9 million road widening project that extended the highway into 4 lanes, with the project finally being completed in 1991. As of today, the sign has been taken down.